Hey everyone, I hope you had a great day. In this video we are looking at some new r/malicious compliance stories. I hope you enjoy them. The first story is called No Permission Required. Behind my house there's an area reserved for garages. Plans were drawn in 1968 and only 3 of the 18 allocated plots have a garage built. The remaining have a cement base and we park there. As spaces are narrow and brick garages are expensive, I thought of having a pre-built one installed for a quarter of the cost. Someone on the same street saw me take measures and asked me if I was putting a garage up. I said yes, to which they replied if I had gotten planning permission. Confused, I said no, I don't think I need it. It turns out I do. To which he replied that he would then call them after I have the garage installed. After looking into it and confirming I do need to apply for planning permission at an extra cost, I was a bit annoyed. All I wanted was a place to use as storage. And here's this guy being kind of passive-aggressive with his comments. The reason is actually that he wants to buy some of the plots near mine, but no one wants to sell them to him. I can be very petty. So I bought a rundown Luton van and had it parked there. And I use it as storage. No planning permission required. The next story is called You Are Eating Too Little. When my parents were freshly married and moved in together, my mom was the one in charge of cooking. She is one of those people that doesn't eat that much. So when she served dinner, she would serve my dad more than her, sometimes even almost double of what she would eat. My father noticed this and was kind of concerned. He has always been a grandpa at heart and wants everyone to eat a lot. He is also the kind of person you might think they are angry when stating their opinion if you don't know them. He told her sternly, "Darling, you are eating too little. This cannot be. Tomorrow I want you to serve yourself the same as you served me." My mom didn't say a thing and just nodded and changed the topic of conversation. The next day when my mom served dinner, there were 2 little plates on the table with even less food than she would normally eat. My father was shocked. "What is this?" My mom just smirked and told him she just did what he asked for. She thanked him because that allowed her to cook less. They both laughed, and from that day on, my father knew better than to criticize my mom's cooking. The last story is called Maliciously Complying with a Bad Workplace. Almost a decade ago, I worked in a call center doing over-the-phone tech support. I started there in 2008. And by 2010, I had switched from a customer service role to a tech support role and then moved into a more senior tech support role, which did not come with extra pay. My job consisted primarily of calling customers back who had an issue that normal tech support was unable to resolve. If I had time, I was expected to help call back customers who left dissatisfied surveys as well. I was also given certain blocks of time during the week to monitor the interdepartmental chat room to help answer questions. I also had a lot of documentation to do to keep track of everything I did and said to a customer. I take pride in my work. Once I learned the ins and outs of the system, I became rather competitive. Each survey or escalation had an associated ticket. We were expected to close 60 tickets per month per person. This equated to just under 3 per day. In order to close a ticket, we either had to resolve the issue or at least note the additional survey feedback, escalate the issue to the corporate office or leave 3 voicemails over 3 days and send them an email. Once I was comfortable with what I was doing, my goal became not to close the most tickets but to absolutely destroy everyone else in how many I got done. The minimum was 60 per month. And there were a couple of people in our 12-person department who never broke 100 and were normally doing 50 to 70 a month. Most people were in the 100 to 200 range, a few sometimes getting up to 250 or so. I regularly did 400 or more every month, for almost 3 years. I had days where I would make 75 phone calls a day. I also monitored the chat room, often more often than required, and wrote articles for our internal database. I helped our slowest members with paperwork and answered incoming frontline emails if they were behind. And I had low-level agents directly transfer live customers to me rather than escalating them if I knew I could resolve the issue right away. Towards the end of that 3 years, I also began helping out another department that dealt with customers who mailed the device in for repair. It wasn't that I was so much smarter than everyone or ridiculously good at troubleshooting, I am just organized and driven. When we had a slow month where almost nobody called us at all, I only did 125 tickets and read probably 7 hours a day. The company I worked for, the one who signed my paychecks, was a contract company owned by a big multinational out of Canada. They took contracts from companies like DirecTV, Comcast and USAA. I found out that the company I was doing contracted work for paid my company $35 per hour for my time, but I only saw $10.50 of that. I also was almost never allowed overtime, maybe 1 or 2 weeks a year, for the entire 7 years. First level leaders were salaried, and if they did not work any overtime, made about $12.70 per hour. I heard that the next level leader made about $60,000 a year, and the building director double that. The company that made the product I was troubleshooting was like a dumpster fire. They sold a product that developed a hardware issue, which they knew was a hardware issue. But they forbid us from telling our customer that, and instead told them that we were working on a software update. Despite being primarily in the USA, our website only offered user manuals in Spanish. And the website developer claimed that it was impossible to add a new tab for user manuals to the website. A coworker recoded the website, hosting new pages on a personal server and linking every outside link like to another part of the website in just 45 minutes and presented it to our corporate office. Our warranty only allowed for repair. We would not ship out a replacement device and would not provide any sort of loaner device. The minimum repair time was 3 weeks and the customer was responsible for shipping the device in, including paying for shipping and a box. If it got lost on the way, it wasn't our problem. Apparently, our repair center decided that first in, first out wasn't a convenient system for processing the repairs. So they just pulled however they felt like it. I had the pleasure of calling customers who had mailed the device in over a year prior because it wouldn't even power on. I had to tell them that it was now out of warranty and we no longer had any parts to repair it anyway. Would they like us to mail it back to them? Now comes the malicious compliance. The first came in when the company tried to launch an in-house made data backup service. It was extremely poorly developed and failed miserably. Much better and free systems existed, and even if the company's system had worked flawlessly, it had no benefits that I could see. When we started receiving complaints that it was not working, our corporate office told us to just immediately escalate to them, don't even troubleshoot. I knew nothing was ever going to come of that, of letting cases just trickle to them. I knew that the corporate would just let them die. So I came in one day and I took all of the pending cases for issues with the backup service and entered them into the ticket service program. Now this is where it got really good. At the time, when you created a ticket, it would send you 3 emails by the time you had finished. That's before leaving notes or closing it, just entering information. I knew this, and I knew I could change the responsible person on the ticket from myself to the person at corporate in charge of this issue at the beginning instead of assigning it to them at the end. I entered 128 tickets for that issue alone that night. I was working the second shift at the time. It only took me a few hours. I had plenty of time to do real work after that. That means the person at corporate who was supposed to handle these cases came into work the next day with over 350 new emails in their inbox. When I got to work the following day, I was told we were no longer escalating those issues and instead just telling customers that we were working on fixing it. Those customers never got called back, and the person at corporate later lost their job because they barely ever got anything done. My last malicious compliance came when they started letting people work from home. They did this to save on operating costs as they expanded the workforce. By moving associates to work from home, this was 2012, they didn't have to pay for electricity or as much bandwidth and such. If you worked from home, you were issued a terminal and keyboard and mouse and a phone. You had to supply a monitor and the system was a virtual machine. When an opportunity came up to switch to work from home, I put in for it. They moved people in groups as they purchased new equipment. When they found out that I wanted to work from home, they tried to talk me out of it. I wouldn't be able to do escalations and surveys at home. So I would have to be frontline tech support again. I asked if I could have a raise then. I was already topped out and knew I would never get a raise ever. They said no, so I chose to work from home. My main reason for working from home was actually money. I didn't get a pay cut and I was spending a lot of money on gas because I lived 25 miles from work. Working from home was like a 50-cent per hour raise because I was spending $20 a week on gas. Working from home was also great for me because I could work in my pajamas and didn't waste over an hour driving to and from work. I never understood why they wouldn't let me do what I had been doing before from home. I had all the same tools at home as in the call center. When I left my old department to work from home, I was doing at least 25% of the work for the entire department. I was closing 400 to 500 tickets a month and still wasting an hour or two every day. They ended up needing to move 3 people into the department to replace me. I stayed with the company for 3 years after that, mostly because the work was easy and I wasn't particularly motivated to find something better. But I ended up getting fired in the end. As I said, they issued me a desk phone. It was like a landline phone but had an LCD screen with some configurable options on it. And you could plug in a headset and it worked over the internet. About 6 weeks before I got fired, my phone started having an issue where it would drop calls. Normally it would ring and you would press answer. But it started having an issue where it would ring once or half a ring or sometimes no ring at all and then hang up on the customer. Sometimes it would then place me in a state where I couldn't take calls again until I pressed a button on the phone. I notified my supervisor immediately when it first happened and continued to do so twice a week over the next 2 weeks. Despite my repeated complaints, I was told to just watch it and she refused to send me out a replacement. A week before I was fired, I was working on a day when my supervisor was not. A different supervisor saw that I was in this unavailable state. And despite me telling him that it was my desk phone and that it had been happening for weeks, he insisted on giving me a formal verbal warning. When my supervisor came in the next day, she immediately called me and told me she was upgrading my verbal warning to a final written warning. The company, like many, had a 4-step system of verbal, written, final written warning and then terminated. She gave no reason for why she was upgrading it to a final written. A few days later, I noticed that one of my tools was not working correctly but managed to struggle through until lunchtime when I restarted my terminal. After lunch, when I restarted, I was unable to log back into it. I immediately texted my boss. We had to clock out for lunch. I didn't want to be in more trouble and I didn't want to be underpaid either. I then called our help desk, but I was back on the second shift, so it was after hour support and they were unable to help me. It was a Friday night and they said that normal help desk personnel wouldn't be available until Monday morning. I hung up and called my boss instead. It went to voicemail. I continued to try to reach out to my boss Saturday, Sunday and Monday via text, phone and email. I had been scheduled to work all weekend but couldn't do so as I was unable to log into my terminal or phone. Monday morning I called the help desk again and was told that I wasn't part of the company anymore, but there was no reason listed as to why. So there was obviously nothing they could do for me. My boss finally reached out to me on Wednesday via text and said that I had been fired for call avoidance. I filed for unemployment. It was denied. But when I appealed, the company didn't even have someone call into the phone interview, so I won by default. I was on unemployment for 6 weeks before starting at my current job. Since then, I've gotten 2 promotions and am currently making more than double what I made at my old job. To top it all off, last year the company lost a class action lawsuit for making people sign into their terminals and open software before clocking into work. They didn't want to pay people for those 5 or so minutes a day, and they lost millions of dollars. I got a check for a few $100 out of it, which was a nice touch. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to the channel. Have a great day. Bye bye.